Welcome to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're listening to us on United Public Radio. The theme song, intro song, was Mark of the Doomslayer by Carl Casey at Whitebat Audio. Good to see everyone tonight. Just a few words in the beginning. I want to thank Arrow for delivering such a gift to the paranormal and UFO community. I mean, beautiful, beautiful article in the Wall Street Journal where they attempt to debunk the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident with former Captain Robert Salas. I mean, it was beautiful. Not only did they make grotesque and astonishingly idiotic mistakes in terms of just logic, right? So imagine this, okay? You have 10 Minuteman nuclear missiles with multiple independent reentry vehicles on every missile, so you could take out multiple cities in the Soviet Union. You have them aimed at targets in the Soviet Union. You have missileers 60 feet underground at hair trigger alert, ready to turn the key at any moment. And you know what? The Pentagon, or so Area wants you to believe, say, hey guys, let's just try a random experiment where we do a directed EMP pulse on these 10 missiles simultaneously while these guys are on hair trigger alert. And of course, they told this cockamamie story to the reporter, who must have written it down staring at the sky in idiot wonder, not asking any questions about, this doesn't make any fucking sense, guys. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's the most illogical, reckless, incompetent possible thing you could do. Hey, let's risk the, 3 lives of over 3 billion people at the time just to test an EMP pulse. Let's just do that. What a great idea, guys. So not only that, but the technology that they were testing wasn't even available until 1971 to 72. So the Wall Street Journal editors didn't even fucking do a fact check. They didn't even do a fact check. So, like, a gift. Thank you, Arrow. Mwah. Thank you. We all know you're lying to everybody about everything. But, like, this is a gift. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We love it. We absolutely love it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Oh, my God. Anyway, that was fantastic. The second thing I want to do is there was a very weird tweet, Z, I guess it's called, or post on Twitter that Matthew Brown, the whistleblower, put up about Aborymon, Aborymon. Okay. So, and it was tied to, some occult stuff with Enochian. There was like an Enochian ring, all this sort of stuff. So, of course, one of my go-tos in these things, I mean, there's many go-tos that I have, but the easiest go-to I can always reach is, and not everybody can always reach him, by the way, is Nathaniel Gillis. So we quickly recorded an episode on Saturday morning. I quickly edited it. Actually, 2 episodes. The second one won't appear until later because I haven't finished editing it. In fact, I finished editing this week. I finished editing 7 episodes. So I'm done until like the half the first week of July. But this one I had to push out the Whitley Strieber interview by until Wednesday, so 2 days later, just so I could, because this other one's timely. So Nathaniel's going to go through what Aborymon is, what this message could possibly mean, etc. So that's coming to you, premiering tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific time, Eastern time, tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Same time, obviously. The other thing that I want to mention is that Nathaniel is going to do a more robust analysis once he has a little bit more time on his Instagram channel. So he just wanted me to put that out to you guys. So as soon as that's ready, definitely do check it out. He's pretty easy to find on Instagram. So those are the kind of two things that I wanted to quickly cover. And then I think, let me just check the comments really quick. Hey, Solite US Expat, good to see you, man. All right, now we're going to get to our regularly scheduled program. And this will be, I think I have a little bit less material than I did last week. So we have time. We have time for me to just make fun and lampoon the wall. I mean, the wall, like, what a joke. Like how far the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, how far they have all fallen. Like, you literally can't trust anything that comes out of those outfits. They are the veritable equivalent, the modern day equivalent of this Pravda in the Soviet Union, truth, right? So it's a little ridiculous. I'm trying to think. There's other things I could comment on, but oh yeah. Another thing that's really annoying is today I've just suddenly started shedding subscribers for no reason whatsoever. So if you are a subscriber, if you could do me a favor, please check to make sure that YouTube didn't arbitrarily unsubscribe you. I'm curious to see if they're doing that. In fact, the YouTube channel that Matt Brown got one of those images from is called Lifting the Lamp, which is a channel that focuses on kind of the occult, Enochian magic, all this interesting stuff. First, I highly recommend you check it out. But he's also been having problems like this where some of his subscribers think they're subscribed and YouTube will unsubscribe them randomly. So please just check, because I was up earlier today and then every time I look, there's like one less subscriber. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. And I think that for the first time in a year, earlier this week, I had a day where I had 0 subscribers, which means all the new subscribers that came in were offset by unsubscribers, or whatever that might be called. So if you are a subscriber and you go and check and it turns out you're no longer a subscriber, can you please put that in the comments so I know if it's a problem? I don't know if it's a problem yet. I just suspect that YouTube kind of plays these shenanigans. Also, vis-a-vis YouTube, for I think the second or third month in a row, I made more money on Spotify than I did on YouTube. And this time it was significantly more money, right? And I have, 10% the views and listens on Spotify than I do on YouTube. But I'm just doing the quick math, 67% more on Spotify than I did on YouTube. So just check that. If it turns out that YouTube unsubscribed you, please write a comment and let me know, so that I have a sense if this is happening to me or not. It might not be happening to me at all. It could just be completely random stuff, and I'm willing to totally accept that as an explanation. And also, when you do that, also, if you can hit just notify, you don't have to, but you'll be more likely to see, I have something like 14,300 subscribers, and like my average kind of new video out of the gate,
Rich Geldrich,
I typically only get 1/15 of that volume when a new video comes out. So just check. Anyway, let's get started with our regularly scheduled program and talk about the tall whites. Let's see. All right. Just give me a second. All right. Tall white aliens, military encounters, whistleblower tales, and mysteries. Imagine being a young airman alone in the Nevada desert, coming face to face with towering chalk white beings that look almost human. In the mid-1960s, U.S. Air Force weather observer Charles James Hall claims this was his reality at Nellis Air Force Base's remote ranges. Hall's detailed accounts, later chronicled in his Millennial Hospitality books, describes tall white extraterrestrials, an alleged group of human-like, non-human intelligences with whom the U.S. military had secret dealings. These beings were said to be 7+ feet tall, with slender, pale bodies, large eyes, and features so similar to humans that they could blend in with a crowd. Unlike the more commonly cited gray aliens, the tall whites have captured imaginations due to their eerie, human-like appearance, advanced technology, and purported integration into military facilities. Okay. Sorry, I want to mark where I left off because I looked down in the comments and they exploded. So, all right. I kind of know where I have to go when I go back. All right. Anyway, let me continue. Apologies for the quick stop. I'm just trying to save my future self some time. Whistleblowers like Hall and even a former Canadian Defense Minister, Paul Hellyer, have made astonishing assertions about the tall whites. Hellyer famously stated that one alien species known as the tall whites has been working with the U.S. Air Force in Nevada. He even related a bizarre anecdote of two tall whites allegedly dressing as nuns to visit Las Vegas incognito. Such stories straddle the line between incredible and absurd, yet they persist, bolstered by experiencer testimonies and fringe research. In this deep dive, we'll explore the lure of the tall whites, their reported physical characteristics, behavior, communication methods, interactions with humans, especially military personnel, and the swirling theories about their motives and origins. We'll sift corroborating accounts from conflicting ones and examine speculative ideas, from the tall whites' possible link to other alien species, like Greys or Nordics, to far-out hypotheses about interdimensional origins or ancient mythological ties. Strap in as we traverse a timeline of testimonies and theories surrounding these enigmatic, tall white NHIs. And just, folks, as a reminder, I like to remind people that I had the ideas of kind of how I wanted this talk to go, but I used the deep research function on ChatGPT to generate a script. Okay. I like keeping this in the open because when I use AI for things like this, I will tell you. And when I don't, I will tell you that, or I won't tell you anything. I'll just kind of go through, but I want to make sure that's clear. If you don't like it, totally understand. You don't have to listen, but I want people to know that because truth is what I care about. This is what this channel is all about. And I want to be full and above board with anybody. All right. With that, I'm going to continue. Charles James Hall's encounters at Nellis Air Force Base from 1965 to 1967. Our journey begins in the spring of 1965 at the Nellis Air Force Base gunnery ranges in the Nevada desert. It was here at a desolate outpost called Indian Springs, now Creech Air Force Base, that Airman Charles Hall claims he first encountered the tall whites. Hall had been assigned as a weather observer on the remote ranges starting in May 1965, a job that left him working solo and in the desert for long stretches. During one such stretch, Hall experienced something that shook him to his core. He reportedly saw strange, tall figures moving near the base's weather shack, figures unlike any human he'd ever seen. Quote, "When you encounter the tall whites, it's such a shock. You are not sure if you're looking at a ghost or an angel, or if you were dreaming," end quote, Hall said of his first sightings. In fact, the initial encounters were so traumatic that Hall admits, quote, "At first, I thought I was going insane," end quote. He spent months questioning his sanity and trying to rationalize the bizarre events. Over time, Hall's fear gave way to a delicate understanding. By late 1965, he realized these beings were neither hallucinogens nor ghosts, or hallucinations. Woo! Man. Were neither hallucinations nor ghosts, but corporeal extraterrestrials living secretly on the base's ranges. According to Hall, the tall whites had a hidden settlement and underground base in the mountains north of Indian Springs Valley. Their presence at Nellis allegedly stemmed from an agreement with the U.S. government dating back to the 1950s, perhaps around the Eisenhower administration. Quote, the U.S. Air Force were indeed hosting extraterrestrials they had reached agreements with during the 1950s, if not earlier, end quote, Hall asserted. Quote, they were principally involved in technology transfers with the U.S. military, end quote. This astonishing claim suggests that tall whites acted as part of a secret exchange program, using the remote desert as a sanctuary in return for sharing certain technologies. Hall recounted that his duties brought him into regular contact with the tall whites throughout 1965 to 1967. He describes a gradual acclimatization. The initially terrified airmen learned the proper way to behave around these skittish yet powerful beings. Quote, I learned over time how to communicate, how to approach them, and to never try and force them to do anything, end quote, Hall explained. Quote, their nervous systems operate very quickly, and they are very protective, very suspicious of our intentions, end quote. Any misstep could be fatal for either party. Hall claims both the humans and the tall whites lived in mutual fear during these encounters. The tall whites were armed and extremely cautious, and the unarmed airmen were under strict orders to avoid provoking or touching the entities. Despite the tension, Hall slowly built a rapport of sorts, particularly with one tall white he nicknamed Teacher. By Hall's account, this female being acted as an intermediary. She once communicated a simple wish, quote, all they really wanted was for people to enjoy them while they were here, end quote. In other words, the tall whites desired to coexist peacefully and even sociably, provided humans behaved calmly. Hall's service at Nellis ended in 1967 when he was reassigned to Vietnam, but he believed the tall whites, quote, are still there, end quote, at the Indian Springs base long after his departure. The underground hangar and living quarters he described were permanent installations, a secret colony beneath the desert where tall white deep spacecraft could come and go covertly. Hall kept silent about these experiences for decades, fearing ridicule or breach of security. It wasn't until the early 2000s, after retiring from military service and obtaining advanced degrees in physics, that he fictionalized his story in a series of novels, Millennial Hospitality 1 through 4. By 2003, UFO investigator Paula Harris interviewed Hall, treating his story as a genuine whistleblower account. Hall's revelations soon caught the attention of the UFO and conspiracy community, spurring both support and skepticism. Notably, 3 independent witnesses, former military personnel, eventually came forward to confirm certain details of Hall's testimony, lending some corroboration to his claims, such as unusual sightings on the Nellis Ranges. While hard evidence remains elusive, Hall had, quote, no cameras, no printed reports, end quote, as proof. His consistency and demeanor convinced a subset of researchers that his story just might be true. Whether one sees him as a brave whistleblower or an imaginative storyteller, Charles Hall put the tall whites on the map of ufology and inspires others to share similar accounts. Physical characteristics of the tall whites. What do these alleged tall white NHI look like? According to Hall and corroborating descriptions from other sources, they are humanoid but unmistakably not human. As the moniker tall white suggests, their stature and coloring stand out. Most adults stand between 6 and 7 feet tall, with some individuals to exceed 8 feet in height. They are lanky and thin-boned. Hall noted their bodies are slender and frail-looking, almost like exaggerated runway models. Their skin is chalky white, literally paper white or alabaster, with no blemishes or age spots. This pallor and height give them an almost spectral appearance in the desert night. Indeed, early witnesses often described them as ghosts or angels before realizing they were flesh and blood beings. Facially, tall whites are often likened to humans of Northern European or Scandinavian descent, Nordic in UFO lore, albeit with some anomalies. They tend to have fine, straight white blonde hair on their heads. Their facial features are narrow and delicate. Hall says they have large eyes that wrap slightly around the sides of the head, giving them a wide field of view. As children, their eyes are often described as a striking blue, which gradually fades to a pinkish albino hue as they age. The irises may reflect light oddly, adding to their otherworldly look. Their noses and ears are small and pressed tight to the head, and their mouths thin. When they speak, some witnesses said it reminded them of a high-pitched cry. More in their speech shortly. A few other peculiar details are noted. Hands with 4 long fingers and a small thumb, and perhaps faint claws or very sharp nails. One observer quipped that from a distance a tall white could pass for a tall, skinny albino human. Their limbs and head are proportionally human-like, but up close the differences, skin texture, eye shape, subtle facial structure differences become evident. Importantly, the tall whites seem adapted to a different environment than Earth's. Hall believed their homeworld has a stronger gravity, causing them to walk with a peculiar gait on Earth, slightly stiff or labored until they adjust. They thrive in arid climates and breathe our air, but may have some difficulty with bright sunlight, their eyes being sensitive. Perhaps for that reason, they primarily operated at night or in dim light on the Nellis Ranges. Hall also learned that tall whites have remarkable longevity, a lifespan of around 600 to 800 years, by his account. They grow slowly. Interestingly, Hall claimed they undergo 2 major growth spurts, one in adolescence and another around midlife, around 400 years old, eventually reaching heights well above 8 feet in their oldest age. Despite their spindly appearance, tall whites can move extremely fast. It's said an adult can run up to 40 miles per hour in short bursts. Numerous witnesses, Hall included, reported that a tall white could be standing at one spot and suddenly blur into the distance faster than a human eye could track. Coupled with their tendency to appear unexpectedly, this gave them a near supernatural reputation among the base personnel. One U.S. airman swore they run like greased lightning, outpacing any human sprinter. However, physically, they are also fragile. Hall noted that their bones can be brittle, an adaptation to high gravity, perhaps, and their skin bruises easily. This fragility made them wary. A simple shove or accidental collision with a stocky human could injure them, which partially explains their nervous, defensive demeanor around us. In terms of attire, the tall whites at Nellis were usually seen in monochromatic suits. Hall described his signature outfit, a white, chalk-colored jumpsuit made of a canvas-like material, sometimes with a thin helmet or hood. These suits weren't just clothing, they were reportedly technological. Observers said the suits would emit a bright, luminescent glow, a 2 to 3 inch halo of white light around the being. The brightness could be modulated, sometimes a soft, fluorescent glow, other times a blinding glare akin to a welding torch, which could actually hurt human eyes. It's speculated that the suits might be some kind of energy field or shield, possibly to protect the tall whites in Earth's environment or serve as camouflage. The description is reminiscent of an astronaut outfit that also provides illumination. Additionally, they were often seen with something akin to a device or weapon, and occasionally other pieces like translucent helmets. In at least one account, female tall whites donned human clothing as a disguise, such as the aforementioned nun's habit in Las Vegas, indicating they can appear convincingly human with proper covering. All right, behavior, emotions, and social life. Hall's reports, along with those of a few who claim contact, paint a picture of tall white behavior and culture. These beings seem to have a family-centric social structure remarkably parallel to humans. They live in small family units. Hall observed men, women, and children among them on the base. In fact, he emphasized how devoted tall white parents were to their offspring. Mothers are highly devoted to their children to the nth degree, existing solely for the purpose of meeting the needs of their offspring, he noted. The children, often referred to as the kids by Hall, are smaller, perhaps 3 to 4 feet tall when young, and intensely curious. They have high energy, quote, fun-loving, energetic, and inquisitive, much like human kids, or they are high energy. Tall white youngsters enjoyed playing games like hide and seek around the desert sagebrush and would even playfully snatch items from humans. Hall recalled that if your toothpaste or socks went missing during your stay in the range barracks, it might have been the tall white children, quote unquote, borrowing them. They apparently found such trinkets fascinating, though the items would mysteriously be returned later. This almost prankish behavior earned the tall whites a comparison to, quote unquote, noisy neighbors. Quote, they literally enjoyed standing around and watching you work, and they want to bring their kids, end quote. One reviewer summarized Riley. Indeed, Hall often felt he was under observation. The tall whites would silently gather at a distance to study him as he performed weather balloon launches or maintenance tasks, their children peeking from behind their legs. Despite this almost comical aspect, there was always an undercurrent of tension. The tall whites are highly protective and easily startled. Hall described them as very jumpy and quick to react if they felt threatened. Each adult carried a pencil-like weapon, a rod-shaped device, at all times. Hall was warned that these devices could emit focused energy beams capable of killing or incapacitating a human instantly. He claims the weapon had multiple settings. It could stun, inflict pain, hypnotize, or kill, depending on the intent. Essentially, it could scramble a person's nervous system through directed microwaves. On several occasions, Hall himself was struck with a painful burst as a warning when he accidentally moved too fast or came too close. Quote, the message is clear. Never forget who is boss. No touching, end quote. Hall quipped about their strict boundaries. Interestingly, Hall also noted the tall whites' own fear of humans. He remarked on, quote, the intense sheer terror that the tall whites feel towards humans, end quote, which mirrors the fear humans felt for them. This two-way fear led to a delicate etiquette. Slow movements, soft speech, and no sudden approaches were essential when interacting. As long as Hall behaved predictably and respectfully, the tall whites remained calm and even friendly. But any perceived aggression, even an outstretched hand to offer a tool, could cause them to recoil or retaliate. Quote, you can't go hunting for them or approach them. They have to come to you, end quote, Hall emphasized. Within their own community, the tall whites showed a clear hierarchy and roles. Hall observed that some individuals acted as leaders or elders, for example. A figure he called the guide or range boss supervised others, and the teacher he befriended was an intermediary who taught him about their ways. Others were pilots of their craft, technicians, or guards. Quote, they have individual talents, differing intellectual capabilities, and physical traits. Some are teachers, some are pilots, some are workers, and some are leaders, end quote, notes one detailed summary. They apparently follow a chain of command, not unlike a military unit. One could liken their presence at Nellis to a deployed expedition with a mission commander, technical crew, and family members along for a long stay. Hall recounted that the tall whites would sometimes quarrel among themselves in their language, but generally maintained order and discipline, especially around humans. Emotionally, the tall whites come off as a paradox. On one hand, they appear reserved, logical, and coldly cautious. On the other, they clearly exhibit familiar emotions: parental love, curiosity, amusement, fear, anger. Hall even noted that tall white females had a penchant for vanity. They would wear makeup to approximate a human complexion, rosy cheeks and lips, when mingling with humans, and they enjoyed compliments on their appearance. This almost endearing human-like vanity is not what one expects from aliens. And it's details like this that both fascinate and skeptics use to question Hall's story. And then many critics even argue it's too anthropomorphic. Hall supporters counter that such traits make the tall whites believable as a complex life form. They are not emotionless robots. They have personalities and personal preferences. In one incident, Hall described a tall white woman, In one incident, Hall described A tall white woman became furious when a new Air Force lieutenant inadvertently frightened her children. She supposedly lashed out and knocked the man to the ground, injuring him. Following that, the tall whites were on high alert, and the base command had to soothe the situation. This story, if true, shows both the physical power of a tall white tossing a full-grown man easily and the intensity of their parental instinct. It also illustrates that misunderstandings could turn deadly, which is why Hall's successful peaceful contact over 2 years is so remarkable. By the end of his tour, Hall had earned a measure of trust from the tall whites. He was allowed to observe them at relatively close range and even help them with minor tasks, like delivering weather data they were interested in. But caution remained paramount. Hall notes that he was never allowed to touch a tall white, nor did they ever fully drop their guard around him. Communication, speech, telepathy, and mind games. One of the most intriguing aspects of the tall whites is how they communicate, both among themselves and with humans. Hall's testimony and related accounts suggest a combination of verbal speech, telepathic projection, and technological aids. Initially, Hall heard the tall whites before he even saw them. While camping on the range, he reported strange sounds at night, high-pitched chatter and trills echoing in the darkness, like a cross between a dog's bark and a songbird's call. This, it turned out, was the native tall white language. Their vocal cords produce rapid, chirping sounds outside the range of normal human speech. It's said to resemble a dog barking or a meadowlark singing in cadence. For a long time, Hall could not decipher any meaning. It sounded like alien gibberish. Over time, he observed patterns and even specific words, or rather sounds, that he came to associate with certain individuals or commands. Remarkably, the tall whites didn't rely solely on this alien tongue. They demonstrated an ability to learn and imitate human language, showing considerable intelligence. Hall recalls that some tall whites learned to speak English well enough to be convincing over a telephone. He writes, quote, "Some have demonstrated an ability to imitate specific humans so well that the imitation cannot be detected when used over a telephone," end quote, notes one report. They apparently practice mimicking human voices and even our idioms. This mimicry skill implies they studied us closely, perhaps listening in on base communications. However, direct speech was not their preferred mode of communication in face-to-face encounters. Hall said that when tall whites did speak English to him, it was usually a few words or phrases, often delivered in a strange accent or robotic tone. They might say his name or simply phrases like, "You wait here," or "We will go now," but complex dialogue was rare. More often than not, the tall whites employed a form of telepathic or mind-to-mind communication, though intriguingly, it might not have been innate telepathy, but technology assisted. Hall observed that senior tall whites carried a small translator device on their person. When activated, this device could project a voice directly into a human mind at close range. A human would hear the tall white speaking in perfectly intelligible English, even if the being's mouth wasn't moving. Hall described it as a voice that seemed to emanate from within his own head, a disorienting experience initially. The catch was that this only worked within a few feet of the person and required a sort of line-of-sight alignment. Hall had to be facing a certain way for it to be clear. The device also apparently functioned as a two-way translator, allowing tall whites to understand human speech more easily. Hall noted that sometimes if the device setting were adjusted, he could overhear tall whites speaking among themselves, sounding like fluent English, even though they were likely using their own language with translation turned on. This gadget essentially bridged the communication gap when necessary. Besides direct speech, there were hints of more subtle mind influence abilities. Some base personnel who encountered tall whites reported puzzling effects, missing time, memory lapses, or oddly vivid dreams following an encounter. It's speculated that the tall whites or the devices could induce a hypnotic state or amnesia in order to protect their secrecy. Hall mentions that a few weather observers who accidentally got too close later recalled the incident only hazily, as if it were an unusual dream, or they didn't recall it at all until prompted. This aligns with the claim that the tall whites' handheld beam weapons could hypnotize humans. In essence, they had the means to scramble our perceptions, be it to induce pain, fear, or to wipe a short-term memory. Some experiencers outside of Hall's case have attributed telepathic powers to Nordic-type aliens, including tall whites. For example, UFO lore suggests that these beings can sense emotions or project feelings of calm or dread to humans. Hall's interactions do indicate a kind of emotional aura. He often felt an overwhelming wave of terror in the presence of tall whites, beyond what he expected. Whether that was a natural human response to their uncanny appearance or something the tall whites were projecting is unclear. On a few occasions, Hall reported that a panicking human would suddenly become calm after a tall white gestured toward them, implying they might use a mind influence technique to subdue fear. Conversely, a tall white could instill intense fear as defense. One Reddit user summarizing Hall's story noted, quote, "They can hypnotize and manipulate our minds," end quote. They sometimes misjudge human intentions. Hall himself was extremely cautious not to look at a tall white directly in the eyes for too long, fearing a hypnotic effect. Despite these advanced methods, much of the day-to-day communication was surprisingly mundane. Hall and the tall whites developed hand signals and simple word exchanges for routine matters. If Hall wanted to signal friendliness, he would extend an empty, open palm slowly, a gesture they came to understand. The tall whites, in turn, might nod or point. Hall recalls the teacher once laughing, a telepathic sense of amusement, when he used an awkward idiom, proving humor was not lost between species. Over 2 years, Hall went from petrified silence to a kind of cautious conversational relationship with the tall whites. By the end, he even felt fondness for some of them and vice versa. Yet formal communication remained limited. It was clear the tall whites kept many secrets and spoke freely only among themselves. To this day, no one has publicly reported learning the full tall white language or script, though Hall noted they had a written form of symbols similar to Egyptian hieroglyphics for their own use. All right, let's take a breather here, and we're about halfway through, and we have plenty of time. And we'll quickly go to comments. All right, where did I leave off? Hey, Johnny, good to see you. Yeah, I think most of these comments are probably related to my initial rant. But yeah, Ginger Norseman, it does sound about right. Yeah, Matthew's tweet was definitely very cryptic, but some of the stuff he was tweeting about were traced back to, what the original source was. So there's some data there. Thank you, Johnny. Johnny Topside writes, love your episodes. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. Pavlos. Thanks, Sean. When do you sleep? I sleep. It's just as soon as I wake up, I come down to my office and I just work. I'm like literally 7 days a week. I wish it wasn't that way, but I want to kind of I'm steadily growing this channel enough that it's still worth it, but it's just so slow. And I've kind of gotten into a cadence that I can't let go of. So we'll see. But yeah, I still get sleep. Fast Mama Jamma. I don't know what you mean if I'm a believer. I don't know. What do you mean? It depends, right? Is the phenomena real? Yes. What is it? I have no idea. Right? I can come up with theories and all that stuff, but I can easily, there's so much information and disinformation. It's hard to parse what's real from what's not. Yeah, Pendulum writes, septic tank of media. Yep. Well, I would say traditional media is a septic tank. Hey, Spiritual Ascension, good to see you. Thank you, Solite US Expat. Yeah, that's actually Just remind me. I'll just put that there for now. Let's see. All right. Thank you, Fast Mama Gemma, for confirming that you're still subscribed. Are you serious? So it's real. Yeah, so folks, please check. Johnny Topside just writes, yeah, I was unsubbed by YouTube. I had to resub. Yeah, just if you enjoy the channel and watch it and you think you're subscribed, please confirm. Unbelievable, unreal, unfreaking real. Victoria Emmerich, yeah, when you question their knowledge, their narrative, they silence you. Absolutely. Spiritual Ascension writes, they really be doing the most to silence the truth coming out, like some viewers too. Yeah, by the way, like I said, definitely check out Lighting the Lamp, because he's getting the same behavior from YouTube. All right, yeah. So Soulite US Expat is still subscribed. Thank you. Yeah, so they unsubscribed you on the Jimmy Dore show, probably. Fast Mama Jama. He's writing, I notice I can't find Jimmy Dore in my history. Johnny Topside, yep, they can't hide the truth forever. Nathan from the Quantum Show writes, I'm still subscribed. You're describing shadow banning. Yeah, it's possible. Why are you so scared right now, Gray Al? Okay, Gray Al is writing, hey, SB, I thoroughly enjoyed your interview at the Gopher Hole. Yeah, so Y-Files has an episode, Tall White on Humanity. Yeah, I've seen that one. Very similar to the information that I'm putting out. Johnny Topside writes, I believe in free will, as do I. Spiritual Ascension says, Johnny, yes. Okay, Spiritual Ascension writes at Johnny's Topside, it's sad that there's characters claiming to be spiritual that try to silence truth speakers. Soulite US Expat saying, I enjoy these deep dives that you do with AI. They're very interesting. It's getting a lot better. Now, like when I write my own stories, I don't use AI at all. It's like strict church and state. But I think for these, because I have to do them once a week, it makes it a lot easier for me to prepare and have content and not just have to wing it like I did in when I have interviewers, I don't really need to prepare. I just interview people. But when I don't have interviews, I would have to wing it. So Ed Keen, timeout, going to locked doors. Woo Rider DG's like, Gray Al, what's popping, man? Okay. I'm just gonna kind of quickly go through because I'm way behind, I think. Oh boy. All right, come on. Peace. I'm not going to repeat arguments. Yeah, I think they did. Soulite US Expat is saying, I wonder if they did any gambling at the casinos. Probably. All right, I'm rolling with Pooner Dice, one of the best tags ever. Behavior, emotions, and social life. I have the first, but lack the other two. All right. I'm avoiding arguments. Scott Ian is writing, I have neighbors that match this description, left out loud. Okay, Soulite US Expo is laugh out loud interesting. I wonder how many of these live among us in houses or even apartments. All right, Shelby Z's writing, look like I missed quite a bit, bummer. Been trying to figure out some things. Have to go back and re-listen. Yeah, no worries. I still get the views. Yes. Shelby Z's writing, did he talk about very long fingers with claw-like nails? At least by this point I did. Yeah. According to what I went through this far, it says that they had a device that helped them be telepathic. But I don't know. There's no way for me to confirm any of this stuff. Tribble Nubbins is writing, sorry, just got here. Did you mention yet that Charles Hall's books? Yeah. They came out initially as science fiction, basically. Yeah, that was established at the very beginning. Now, how it became part of the lore, it sounds like other people came out, like Paul Hellyer, and said, no, they're real. But who knows? Yeah. Solite US expat, even fiction has slithers of truth. Yeah, sometimes fiction is, reality, and reality is fiction. Yeah, Tribble Nobins is writing, sometimes you can only tell the truth in fiction. Lots of officials have done it. Breezy is right. That's what I heard, Tribble. I mean, I think that's what John Brandenburg did, right? Okay. Yeah, Gray Owl. Yeah, word up, Sean, Dan, and Miss the Rant. Maynard is having kittens tonight. Fair enough. Dang. Hey, Jalal, good to see you. Oh, man. Hey, E, thank you for subbing. I appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah, we'll get back to the tall whites after I get through all the comments to this point, because I have enough content to kind of get me through, but I'm halfway through the content, but I'm not halfway through the stream. So these comments should put me back on track. Oh, so no. So Gray Owl's writing, hey, Sean, is the upcoming Rotor Vegas Aliens update a live stream? No, pre-recorded. Jason H, are tall whites and Nordics the same? It depends on who you talk to. I don't think they are, but it depends on who you talk to. All right, Life 101 says, if you want to meet aliens or demons, just play with a Ouija board and call out to the demons to possess you or for the aliens to abduct you. But pray to Jesus Christ if you need help. Okay. All right, I think I just got to the last comment about a minute before I needed to. So I'm going to take one little drink here, and we'll get back to the regularly scheduled program in about a minute. All right, I'm just going to start. It's weird to just wait. Oh, wait, no, that's good. I need to mark where I left off, and now it's exactly time. Okay, interactions with human military personnel. One of the most contentious aspects of the Tall White Saga is the allegation of direct cooperation between these aliens and the U.S. military. Hall's eyewitness story forms the crux of this, but he's not the only source. Paul Hellyer, Canada's former Minister of Defense, shocked many in 2014 by asserting that, quote, at least 4 species, end quote, of aliens are visiting Earth and that the tall whites are working with the U.S. government, specifically with the U.S. Air Force facilities, or the U.S. Air Force at facilities in Nevada. Hellyer even claimed these beings have been known to pass for humans in public, citing the Las Vegas trip example. While Hellyer did not personally work with the tall whites, he said his information comes from high-level sources and whistleblowers. In essence, Hellier's public statements corroborate Hall's core claim that tall white extraterrestrials have been interacting with and possibly assisting the military for decades under deep secrecy. According to Hall, the Nellis Air Force Base chain of command was aware of the tall whites' presence on the range. In fact, special protocols were in place. Hall was told that if he ever encountered uninvited guests on the desert, a euphemism for the tall whites, he was to remain calm, keep a respectful distance, and notify his supporters afterward. He later learned that at least since the 1950s, the Air Force had established a covert diplomatic understanding with these beings. The tall whites were permitted to use a portion of the Nellis Range, a sprawling 3,000 square miles of unrestricted land, as their residence and operational area. In return, the Air Force would benefit from occasional technology sharing and scientific methods or insights. Hall asserts that technology transfers did occur. For example, he believes some advances in fiber optics and propulsion physics in the late 20th century were subtly influenced by what the tall whites demonstrated. He cites an analysis by Dr. Alan Hynek of strange fibers from a UFO that matched no known material, speculating it was akin to fiber optic cable. This is speculative, but aligns with the common UFO lore theme that ETs gave a boost to human tech. On base, only a limited number of personnel were read into the program. Hall mentions that generals and high-ranking officers occasionally accompanied tall whites on the range. Quote, I frequently saw the tall white extraterrestrials accompanied by U.S. Air Force generals, end quote, he stated. These officials would often act as liaisons, meeting the tall whites at a secure location to exchange information or requests. There was even supposedly a designated building, a range weather shack, that had a modified interior to accommodate tall white physiology, used for certain meetings. Hall's colleague once told him of stumbling upon a gathering where a group of tall whites were inside a base facility along with Air Force brass, an encounter that left the young airman utterly shocked. Others who weren't prepared sometimes mistook the tall whites for apparitions. Some guards reported seeing a ghostly figure in coveralls at the perimeter fence, and one famous local legend, Range 4 Harry, was actually a code for tall white sightings. Airmen joked about a phantom white horse, but it was a way to talk about the tall aliens without saying alien. At Nellis, the collaboration seemed to revolve around logistics and R&D. Hall learned the tall whites were allowed to use our infrastructure in limited ways. For instance, their children could quietly observe human activities to learn about us. And the tall white craft occasionally took on supplies, like elements or metals they needed, with Air Force help. In turn, the tall whites might advise on certain projects. There are claims, unverified, that the tall whites provided insight into electronic systems and aircraft design. Some UFO observers suggest they may have had a hand in the development of the stealth bomber or other advanced aeronautics in the 1970s. Paul Hellyer, for instance, has said, quote, aliens have provided some technology, microchips, Kevlar, and so on, end quote, and that they would, quote, be willing to give us more, end quote, if humanity stopped its wars. The tall whites specifically, Hellyer implied, were kept close by the U.S. military for such potential strategic advantages. A dramatic event often recounted in Hall's narrative is the case of the tall white's medical emergency. Allegedly, one of the tall white females fell ill or was injured on the range. The Air Force arranged a clandestine medical evacuation, bringing the being into a military hospital for treatment. Human doctors worked under the guidance of tall white medics to help her recover. This incident, if true, showed a deep level of trust and cooperation, and was likely highly classified. It is said that those doctors later struggled with what they had seen, essentially treating an extraterrestrial patient. Hall's accounts imply that these sorts of interactions were extremely rare but did happen under special circumstances. Hall left Nellis in 1967, but believed the program continued and perhaps still continues today. There is speculation that the Indian Springs facility became a permanent tall white liaison site. Notably, Indian Springs was later developed into Creech Air Force Base, known as a hub for cutting-edge drone operations. Some theorists muse that perhaps the tall whites influenced our drone technology or data processing, giving them faster mental processing speeds. While that's conjecture, it's intriguing that the same location remains a focus of advanced military tech. Beyond Nellis, do tall white interactions extend elsewhere? Hall only had knowledge of Nevada. However, Hellier and others have hinted that tall whites might have embassies or arrangements with other nations too, though the U.S. was primary. The alleged tall white trip to Las Vegas gives a glimpse of their broader interaction. Hellier recounted, and Vice News later investigated, how two tall whites purportedly went shopping in Las Vegas one day, dressed in full nun's garb. They walked among crowds, browsed stores, and nobody noticed anything off, a testament to how human-like they appear when covered up. This story, while almost comical, serves a narrative purpose. It suggests the tall whites have ventured into civilian areas. If true, it raises questions. Did the Air Force chaperone these outings? Were they mere curiosity-driven excursions by the tall whites? Hall did mention that adult tall whites were intensely curious about human society. They were fascinated by our entertainment and commerce. A few begged their superiors for a chance to see Las Vegas's glittering lights after hearing about it. The nun-disguised anecdote might be a tall tale, no pun intended, or a real incident, but it underscores the strange notion that alien visitors could be walking among us undetected, at least in Nevada. All right, now relations to other alien species, Greys, Nordics, etc. The UFO field is rife with claims of multiple extraterrestrial species interacting with Earth. In such lore, where do the tall whites fit among the likes of Greys, Nordic aliens, reptilians, and others? Hall's unique position is that he allegedly encountered three types of NHIs during his service. The tall whites, a type of gray alien, and a group he nicknamed the Norwegians with 24 teeth. Mr. Hall said he had contact with three types of aliens: the tall whites, about 2.5 meters tall, Greys with yellow-orange skin, and Norwegians with 24 teeth who look like humans and speak English, end quote, one report summarized. This indicates Hall believed at least two other species were also operating on Earth. The quote-unquote Greys with orange skin he mentioned differ from typical depictions of short gray aliens. Perhaps they were a variation or an entirely separate species mistaken for Greys. Hall did not elaborate much on them, suggesting his interaction was minimal, possibly sightings of small orangish beings who kept to themselves. Some speculate these could be biological robots or another race under tall white protection, but that's conjecture. The Norwegians Hall refers to sounded very much like the classic Nordic aliens, reported by many contactees since the 1950s. These are described as indistinguishable from humans, usually tall, blonde, blue-eyed, and friendly. Hall's twist was the oddly specific detail that they have 24 teeth instead of the human 32. He claimed to have met some of these beings in Wisconsin in the early 1960s, perhaps or before his Air Force days, and later realized they were like extraterrestrials living incognito. They spoke fluent English and blended into society easily. Hall believed the Norwegians came from a star system near Barnard's Star, about 6 light years away, and were a separate group from the tall whites. This implies multiple alien groups might be visiting Earth with different agendas. The Norwegians, Nordics, and UFO lore are often portrayed as more benevolent or spiritually advanced, sometimes even warning humans about the Greys or about nuclear weapons. In Hall's case, the Norwegians seemed benign and curious about humans. One even gave him a ride in a car, he recounts, without him realizing his driver wasn't human until later. How do tall whites and Nordics relate? Some researchers initially assumed Hall's tall whites were the same as the well-known Nordic Palladian aliens, since both are tall, fair, and human-like. Indeed, even Hellier in interviews has sometimes conflated the terms, mentioning Nordic blondes and tall whites almost interchangeably as ETs that look human. However, Hall himself drew a distinction. The tall whites have their
Nathaniel Gillis.
The tall whites have that chalk white coloring and large wraparound eyes, which set them apart from a rosy-cheeked Scandinavian appearance. One could speculate that perhaps Nordics and tall whites are distantly related species, or one is a subset of the other, but there's no consensus. Hall's Norwegians apparently could intermix in human society much more easily, only their dental structure betraying them, which is an odd detail in itself. The tall whites, while human-looking, still needed disguise and caution in public. As for the classic gray aliens, the short, big-headed beings of Roswell lore, Hall's story suggests they were also present on Earth. He did not indicate any direct interaction between the tall whites and grays, but the fact he listed them implies the Air Force had knowledge of multiple species. Other whistleblowers and ufologists have posted a sort of hierarchy or division of labor among alien types. For instance, small grays often depicted as worker drones or genetic technicians, whereas tall whites, Nordics, might be more like diplomats or observers. In some conspiracy theories, tall whites are even said to supervise or command certain gray factions. However, Hall did not explicitly describe any chain of command between species. His encounters with grays were peripheral. For instance, hearing of an underground base segment where a diminutive orange-gray being was once seen. Paul Hellier, however, gave a broader perspective. He claimed there are at least 4 species. Give me a second. I had a bunch of stuff pop up on my screen, and then I lost my place. All right, they have different agendas. Nearly all of them are benign, but 1 or 2 are not. Hellier listed short grays, tall whites, Nordic blondes, and a group of malevolent reptilians as frequently discussed in UFO circles. In his view, the tall whites seem to be on relatively good terms with the U.S., where some other species might not be. He did not say tall whites rule over others, just that each had their own role. Some commenters have interpreted the tall whites as part of a galactic federation of advanced races, a concept Hellier himself entertained, suggesting these species communicate with each other and even with world governments to some extent. It's worth noting that Hall's testimony predates and possibly inspired later claims by other supposed insiders. For instance, this fucking guy. For instance, Corey Goode, who is a complete fraud, very likely, given that he's suing everybody for repeating what he claims is true and actually happened. A controversial self-proclaimed secret space program participant mentioned tall white extraterrestrials in his narratives, though his tales are widely unverified. Others, like Clifford Stone, an Army sergeant who said he was on crash retrieval teams, listed tall, pale beings among entities he cataloged. These accounts are often lumped together by believers as reinforcing each other, but skeptics caution it might be a case of meme-like propagation of the same story. In summary, the hierarchical relations between tall whites and other NHIs remain speculative. Hall's experiences present the tall whites as independent operators, guests of the U.S. military, not visibly subordinate to or in charge of any other species. If anything, the tall whites seem to stick to their own family groups and mission parameters. They didn't invite grays over for dinner, nor receive orders from Nordics, at least not in any account we have. However, the mere mention of multiple species by Hall and others opens the tantalizing question: do these aliens know of each other? Do they cooperate or compete? Hall once mused that the tall whites likely were aware of the grays' activities on Earth and vice versa, but he was not privy to their interactions. It remains an open mystery in the lore how these pieces fit together into a larger cosmic puzzle. All right, let's take a break there and kind of find where I left off. Oh man, it's been a busy weekend. And I literally got back from a hike like right into this live stream. So I drank all I had to drink for the most part. Okay. Woo Rider GG is writing Gray Owl. Beauty is only skin deep. Jalay Jalal is writing the Nordics are considered Adamics, a group that somehow survived underground a previous reset, a serious project. All right. I'm just grind through this. All right, Solite US Expat is writing, I wonder if we will have any deathbed confessions in the future to corroborate these stories. Who knows? All right, Jalay Jalal is writing, there was an enlisted woman of color who was assigned the same location many years later. She saw shape-shifting. She saw a rabbit, a small horse, a dog, and a few other animals. And it was tall white. Interesting. DS is writing, I think tall whites equals Charles Halls, via Boas, etc. Skinny, pale white. Chirp, make animal noises, make guttural Japanese sounding utterances, different from Nordic, stranger, and less human. Yeah. Oh boy. DS said Jim Semivan said he thought Chris Bledsoe's beings might have been the same as Charles Hall. He said so on Dreamland. Interesting. I didn't hear that interview, but thank you for sharing that. Walking Moments is writing, I'm alien. Jalay Jalal's writing, remember Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and the reptilians were visible on LSD. Yeah. So Gray Owl's writing DS. I'm also intrigued regarding Semivan's X-rays. He last said on experiencing the phenomenon that his X-rays cats have been called messengers, and they look like the soul eaters of Harry Potter claim. Okay, Jalay Jalal is writing, most of the draconian genetic experiments and cloning involve changeling DNA, so shapeshifting for sure. Walking Moments is saying, now you have met an alien. Okay, Gray Owl's writing, I looked at some imagery of these soul biters and they seemed to an owl to be possibly cross-referenceable to the depictions of the jinn, black bodies with white horns. Okay. Wait, call him back. I have questions for Nathaniel. Call him back. How did you know he called? Oh, I guess it says Nathaniel Gillis. Well, yeah, a lot of people like they know I'm on. They know I'm on too. So like, I had 2 calls and they both know I was on. If I call them, I lose my ability to hear the stream. So I like it just scrambles everything. Yeah, owls are very special. Hey, Sean Bloor. I hope I don't even know if I pronounced that right. My apologies, but thank you very much for subscribing. YouTube's actually, this is the second time today somebody said YouTube recommended my channel. That's for people who've been following me for like the last 3.5 years. They know that is not normal. That is not normal. That YouTube, like this is the first time I'm hearing that YouTube. Most of the like traffic that I've gotten has not come from YouTube. So I'm maybe they're, I don't know. Yeah, Spiritual Ascension writes, so Corey Good is suing people for spreading info he has spoken on, which happens to be truth. How the F does that work? This is what I mean by spiritual people trying to. Yeah, I don't even think the stuff he's saying is true. Otherwise, why is he suing people for stealing his intellectual property? Because he made it up. But I don't know. Okay, so Solite US Expat saying David Oates, the father of reverse speech, has reversals on Corey Good, and they all come out as he's full of himself. Okay, so Cyan Bloor says, "Hey, Gray Al, I used to do a couple of channels and had to step back due to ill health. I'm sorry to hear that. Is it Sean? I don't know how to pronounce it, but just let me know if I'm pronouncing it right." Yeah, you're very much welcome to be here. I appreciate you subscribing to the channel. I need all I can get, believe me. And by the way, YouTube's been unsubscribing people. So Johnny, who's on this channel tonight, he checked and YouTube had unsubscribed him. Wow, you're watching this. You're watching this in like the witching hour, man. That's brave. So Breezy's writing, I wonder if any humans have changeling DNA. The Real Deal's writing, yes, exactly. Jesse Roberts, I'd be scared if Nathaniel Gillis called me. Like, what demon evil business is going on today? Yeah, he gets excited about things that don't phase me. You know, like I get stressed at work, but this, like, none of this stuff stresses me at all. Like, it just doesn't. Right? It doesn't scare me. It doesn't. But okay, so real deal's writing. It's 10:23 here. Oh, which means I'm pretty close to catching up. I don't know, but we'll find out when I finish the rest of this. Oops. What exactly is changeling DNA, though? What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. I'm just checking my. Oh wow, I actually have gained subscribers on this. So that's good because it was dropping like a stone today, as YouTube was probably unsubscribing people without their consent. That's just just classic. But I'm surprised. Like there are two people today who said YouTube recommended the channel. That is unusual. That is not normal. So that's good. Maybe I'm less. I don't know, shadow banned, or maybe I was never shadow banned, and I'm doing something differently that I haven't done before. I have no idea. All right, let me just. Yeah, there's more people watching than that, but that's probably just on YouTube, like at the moment. But definitely hit like and subscribe. Hmm. All right, let's get back to it. All right, motivation and culture of the tall whites. Understanding why the tall whites are here and what they want is perhaps the deepest question. Hall gleaned bits of their motivations through his conversations and observations, though much is still guesswork. One clear motive was resource and rest. The tall whites used the earth, and Nellis specifically, as a way station for travel. Hall learned that the tall whites have deep spacecraft capable of exceeding light speed. They claimed Einstein's relativity is incomplete, and they found a workaround. These stellar ships would periodically arrive and depart from Earth using the hidden desert base as a landing and resupply point. This suggests Earth is conveniently located for them, possibly near a route between their home and elsewhere. Hall believed the tall whites might originate from somewhere in the vicinity of Arcturus or the Pleiades constellation, based on hints they gave. Some accounts specifically claim, quote, this race is from near the star Arcturus, end quote. If true, that's about 37 light years away, a significant voyage. Thus, a pit stop on Earth with its abundant resources and breathable atmosphere would be useful. The tall whites seem to require water, some minerals, and a secure location to recuperate. Earth provided all three. Another motivation appears to be observation and study. The tall whites, by Hall's depiction, were intensely interested in human civilization. They enjoyed learning about our behavior, culture, and technology. Remember, they would watch Hall do mundane tasks just out of curiosity. They also ventured into Las Vegas out of fascination with human society's glitz. This aligns with a general anthropologist vibe, since that many contactee stories attribute to Nordic-type aliens. They are here to watch and perhaps gently guide humanity. Hall's tall white friend teacher was explicitly said they wanted people to enjoy them being here, implying a desire for amicable relations and maybe even cultural exchange. However, they were not ready to announce themselves openly for obvious reasons. They preferred to work through military channels and controlled encounters. Culturally, the tall whites come across as pragmatic and disciplined, yet with leisure pursuits reminiscent of ours. Hall noted they liked certain human foods, for example. They developed a taste for strawberry ice cream and would ask for it as a treat. Anecdotes say some tall whites raided a military kitchen freezer for ice cream at night. They also have their own art or recreation. He once saw a tall white using a device to create holographic light patterns in the sky, possibly a form of art or communication. Family is clearly central to them. Raising their young safely was a top priority. This might actually be their primary motive on Earth, to find a safe haven for their families during lengthy space travels. The presence of children in even what Hall called summer camp, the kids treated the Nevada stay like a learning camp, suggests a long-term but temporary stay rather than permanent colonization. What about their relationship to humanity's future? Are they benevolent helpers, indifferent observers, or exploitative in some way? Hall's experiences lean toward the tall whites being cautious but largely benign. They did not randomly harm humans. Any aggressive action was in self-defense or defense of their young. They could have easily killed Hall or others at any time, yet chose restraint. Hall even said at one point, quote, the teacher told me they bear us no ill will, if anything. They have a fondness for humans who show genuine kindness, end quote. Hall grew convinced the tall whites actually liked aspects of human culture. Music interested them, as did children's laughter. This paints them as curious sojourners than invaders or overseers. Contrast this with darker conspiracies out there. Some fringe theorists insist the tall whites have a hidden agenda of control. The wildest claim came in 2014 via Iranian media, which is probably, to be fair, more credible than U.S. media, but still. Alleging, quote, tall white space aliens control America, end quote. and that they were behind both the US government and Nazi Germany's rise. This theory posited that tall whites were puppeteering global events to eventually enslave humanity. It even claimed they helped Hitler build advanced submarines in the 1930s. However, these accusations trace back to dubious sources, a hoax article by a known fake news author, which is basically all journalists, which was then echoed by Iran's semi-official news agency. They have been widely debunked and even ridiculed, as the Washington Post pointed out. If super aliens helped the Nazis, it's puzzling they still lost the war rather handedly. In short, there's no credible evidence that tall whites are secretly controlling governments or plotting conquest. Hellyer himself, while believing they're here, emphasized that nearly all of them are benign and any hostile intent is limited to perhaps one or two other species. Another notion about tall white motives is the guardian or watchdog theory. Because they are concerned about nuclear weapons, as Hellyer noted, aliens got very interested in Earth after we developed the atomic bomb. Some suggest the tall whites might be here to monitor our military developments and prevent catastrophe. Hall did note that tall whites were often present during certain weapons tests in the desert, as if observing our capabilities. They seemed particularly watchful of any activity that could threaten their base or indicate we might target them. It could be that part of their deal with the Air Force was we share knowledge and you let us stay, but you also don't use certain weapons around us or against us. On a global scale, maybe they quietly discourage nuclear conflict, which aligns with many UFO reports of unidentified craft appearing near nuclear missile sites. All of this is speculative, but fits a pattern in UFO lore where advanced beings try to nudge humanity away from self-destruction. Finally, consider the tall whites' long-term agenda. Are they just passing through, or do they intend to reveal themselves openly one day? Hall didn't think they had any immediate plan for disclosure. People weren't emotionally ready to accept alien life forms, he said, explaining why officials kept it quiet. The tall whites themselves seemed to prefer staying in the shadows. They could have left any time, and maybe they did depart at some point, but as far as Hall could tell, they were content with a quiet coexistence. Perhaps they view us like a developing species to be observed, similar to how we might preserve primates with interest and care, but not direct interference in their social structure. In summary, the tall whites' motivations appear to be a mix of self-interest, safety, resupply, research, and a cautious form of diplomacy or cultural exchange with humans. They are not overt conquerors nor saintly saviors. They have their own needs and concerns first, but their willingness to cooperate with the Air Force and adapt to living alongside humans hints at a potential friendship, one that, if real, has been unfolding behind the scenes for over half a century. All right. Just take a breather here. Take a look at the time. Oh. All right, so speculative theories and esoteric interpretations. Beyond the accounts of Hall, Hellyer, and a handful of others, the story of the tall whites has inspired a plethora of far-reaching theories. It's important to approach these with healthy skepticism, as they often blur the line between research, myth, and New Age imagination. Here we address a few of the prominent speculative interpretations with appropriate caveats. Start with interdimensional beings. Some theorists propose that the tall whites are not aliens from a distant planet, but rather interdimensional visitors. This idea is popular in esoteric circles that try to reconcile UFOs with paranormal phenomena. The argument goes that tall whites might step in and out of our dimension, which is why they can appear and vanish so suddenly. Their glowing suits and ability to induce missing time could be explained by interdimensional physics, as if they exist slightly out of phase with our reality. While intriguing, Hall's testimony doesn't explicitly support this. He perceived them as solid, flesh and blood beings requiring spacecraft for travel, which is more consistent with physical extraterrestrials. Still, the interdimensional hypothesis remains an untestable but imaginative framework that some experiencers favor for explaining the almost ghost-like elusiveness of tall whites and other ETs. Then there's mythological connections. A few authors have tried linking tall whites to ancient myths of otherworldly beings. For example, the tall whites description, tall, pale, luminous beings who live underground, draws parallels to certain fairy or elf folklore in Europe. In Norse myths, light elves were fair and could blend in among humans. Some UFO writers suggest that legends of elves, angels, or the Nordic gods might have been inspired by ancient encounters with tall white-like extraterrestrials. An even more striking connection is posited with Sumerian and Mesopotamian mythology. The Imdugud Anzu. Researcher Anton Parks identified Imdugud as very tall, white-skinned beings in ancient lore. They were said to have blue eyes and emit sounds like whistling, which is eerily close to tall white traits. Parks noted that Imdugud were one of the few mythic beings who practiced natural childbirth and family rearing versus other gods who used artificial means. Again, paralleling the familial behavior of tall whites. Could it be that tall whites visited Earth in antiquity and were remembered as gods or angels? It's a fascinating idea, but evidence is scant beyond similarities in descriptions. Such comparisons could just as easily be coincidental, or a result of modern people projecting UFO narratives onto old myths. Then there's the creators or hybridization theories. One extreme hypothesis paints the tall whites, or a race very much like them, as the engineers of humanity. This stems from conspiracy texts like the alleged Lacerda files, supposedly an interview with a reptilian being which mentions a race called the Ilojim from Aldebaran, who came to Earth in prehistory. According to these stories, the Elohim were tall, white-skinned, and manipulated early primates to create modern Homo sapiens. The parallels to tall whites are evident. Tall, pale, sensitive to sunlight from Aldebaran. If one takes that fantastical tale at face value, it would mean the tall whites or their kin might be our gods or even our direct progenitors. This overlaps with the ancient aliens theory popularized in the media, where various ET groups are credited with kickstarting human civilization. It's highly speculative and not supported by Hall's own claims. He never said anything about tall whites creating humans. Nonetheless, in some UFO forums, the question is raised. Are tall whites watching over their creation? There's no concrete evidence for this dramatic notion, but it highlights how the mystique of the tall whites has grown into quasi-religious territory for some enthusiasts. Then there's spiritual and esoteric interpretations. Outside of nuts and bolts ufology, some New Age channels view tall whites, often lumped with Nordics Pleiadians, as benevolent cosmic beings with a spiritual message. They are sometimes cast as enlightened beings helping humanity ascend to a higher consciousness. Meditation groups have claimed telepathic contact with tall white guides, imparting wisdom or offering healing. Again, these claims are subjective and unverified, quite distant from the concrete military context of Hall's story. But it's worth noting how the narrative shifts in different circles. To some, tall whites are space brothers here to aid humanity's spiritual growth. To others, they are just another species going about their own agenda. And then again, hybrid programs. Another theory asks if the tall whites are involved in the famous hybridization program, often attributed to gray aliens. The idea that ETs are creating human-alien hybrids. There's no direct indication of this with tall whites. Those programs usually involve abductions by grays. Tall whites, in Hall's accounts, didn't abduct people or tamper with human genetics openly. However, one might speculate, since tall whites can interbreed among themselves and have kids, could they interbreed with humans? There's no report of such. And given their anatomical differences, 24 teeth, etc., it seems unlikely without advanced genetic engineering. Hall was never aware of any hybrid experiences by tall whites, and he likely would have been horrified if such were happening. This silence on the matter suggests tall whites were not overtly interested in mixing genes or reproducing with humans, differentiating them from the lore around the grays. Now, the 24 teeth thing, the AI, I think, made a mistake, right? Because the AI earlier said it was Nordics, or a Nordic species that had 24 teeth. It didn't explicitly say that tall whites did. That doesn't mean that they didn't, but it could be a mistake. When everyone, just give me a quick second. Give me a moment. All right, sorry about that. I'm dying here. I ran out of like something to drink, so I needed help. Again, I just got back from a hike, and I am like I'm sweating like a dog here, and not really getting any. So that's been resolved. All right. So when addressing these esoteric ideas, it's crucial to state they are hypotheses without proof. They often arise from attempts to fit the tall white's narrative into a bigger cosmological picture that the hard evidence doesn't fully reveal. Thus, we share them as curiosities with caution. These interpretations go beyond the direct witness testimony and venture into conjecture. All right, so conclusion, an ongoing enigma. As we wrap up this exploration with the tall white NHIs, we find ourselves at the intersection of credible personal testimony and fringe speculation. On one side, we have Charles Hall's detailed firsthand story, consistent over the years, full of specific information and partially corroborated by others in the military. His account gives a granular, humanizing look at these alleged extraterrestrials, from feeling their intense stare in the desert at night to hearing their strange sing-song language and even understanding a bit of their hopes and worries. Hall's portrayal makes the tall whites feel real enough to touch, though of course touching was strictly forbidden. On the other side, we have the ever-growing mythos that surround the tall whites. In the 2 decades since Hall came forward, the concept of tall white aliens has steeped into UFO lore or folklore alongside greys and reptilians. We've seen former Defense Minister Hellier lending it weight by saying, yes, tall whites exist and work with our military. We've seen it transform into internet age legends of aliens dressed as nuns and Nazi space alien shadow governments. The tall whites have become characters in our modern sci-fi imagination, sometimes as wise guardians, other times as potential puppet masters. It's a prime example of how a single whistleblower account can ripple outward and take on a life of its own. So what can we conclude? The skeptic will note that no physical evidence has ever surfaced, no photos. All said cameras were banned and the site scrubbed from maps. No declassified documents explicitly naming tall whites, no confirmed radar tracks or alien artifacts tied to them in the public domain. Hall's story, while fascinating, remains unproven. Anecdotal evidence supported only by a few similar anecdotes. For skeptics, the simple explanation is that the tall whites exist in the realm of fiction or at best misidentification and folklore. Perhaps Hall's experiences were a mix of isolation-induced hallucinations and base legends, and that he later wove into a narrative. The more cynical might point out Hall published his accounts as a fictionalized book, likely to avoid breaching security oaths or ridicule, which further blurs truth and fiction. The believer, however, will highlight how detailed and internally consistent Hall's testimony is. They'll point to those independent witnesses who allegedly confirm parts of his story, like colleagues who saw Range 4 Harry or encountered tall entities on night patrol. They'll remind us that new Pentagon UFO programs and whistleblowers, like those in 2023 discussing non-human biologics in congressional hearings, have made the idea of alien contact slightly less outrageous. Could it be that Hall's tale was a small part of a much larger secret, one that the world is gradually coming to terms with? It's tantalizing to imagine that somewhere under the Nevada desert, there's still an alien enclave with tall, pale figures monitoring our jets and drones, occasionally peering at our society from afar, waiting for the right time to say hello. In this episode's journey, we've heard Hall in his own words describing the shock and wonder of meeting beings, quote, so different and obviously more advanced than us, end quote. We've seen how these tall whites purportedly behave, at once aloof and nosy, powerful yet vulnerable, alien but eerily human-like. We navigated the tightrope of cooperation at Nellis, a secret Cold War era détente between species, if you believe it. And we ventured into the outer fringes of theory, where tall whites morph into angels or puppet masters, depending on who's telling the story. The tall white aliens as a subject encapsulate the enduring allure of the UFO phenomenon, the possibility that we are not alone and that the others might already be living here among us in the shadows. It forces us to ask if an Air Force airman in 1965 really did share a workspace with extraterrestrial visitors. What does that say about our world? Perhaps that truth is indeed stranger than fiction. For now, the tall whites remain an enigma. Perhaps future whistleblowers or document releases will shed more light. Or perhaps this will stay a fascinating footnote in UFO lore. Charles Hall, now in his later years, still stands by his story, and many who have heard it find it hard to completely dismiss. In the end, whether the tall whites are out there or not, their story has value as a narrative, one that challenges our perceptions, ignites our imagination, and keeps us looking up at the desert sky wondering, is someone else watching back? That's it. That's all she wrote, folks. I told you it'd be a little bit shorter than the usual. So let's see. Let's go to the comments. Oh, just give me a second. I'm getting. Let's see. All right. I'm just getting pinged by different people. All right. So bear with me. I'm just trying to find out where I left off. All right. All right. 42 likes. Yeah. Keep hitting like, keep sharing, keep subscribing, please. Okay, The Real Deal's writing. I love your solo episodes. You're great, but I've been a fan a few years now. Hey, I appreciate you, The Real Deal. Thanks for following me when no one, very few people knew this channel existed. So maybe at some point we'll see the exponential growth that people, eventually report seeing. But it's been a brutal slog, almost 3.5 years. 3.5 years. So we just keep going. Okay, I'm going to read this. So Gray Owl writes, I listened to the Jimmy Church, Tom DeLonge interview from back in 2016. Never heard it before. It was painfully spooky in its plot lines and very, very tired in its outlook on contact, i.e. they are bad and the feds are good and can save us, yada, yada, effing yada. Yeah. I have no... let's see. I have no illusions about the Fed. They couldn't save themselves from a paper bag. Okay, Gray Owl's writing, I have an out-of-box thinking idea. Let's try diplomatic and friendly when X-rays show up. You never know. We might... Yeah, I agree. And then Gray Owl's saying, if they come in hot, plasma rounds finding, then we tap dance all over them. Or style.
Upstairs.
Okay.
Hey.
Upstairs. Okay. So yes, I refresh the feed. It's like, can we get to 100 likes? Let's get to 100 likes. I don't know if that's possible, but why not? Yikes. All right, Jesse Roberts is writing. Maybe I missed it, but was the Valiant Thor supposed to be a tall white? No, I think he was supposed to be a Nordic. A Venusian, not a tall. Yeah, that too. Okay. Okay, Solite US Expat is writing. I think, as I recall, John Vivanco and his team of remote viewers got data that Valiant Thor was not a real alien or story. Okay, sorry, folks. I'm just, hey, good morning, Sirius. Okay. Hey, Kason Lee, good to see you. Yeah, I guess other folks have answered it. Awesome. I asked the right group. Thanks. Okay, Jalal Jalal's writing. It was not the tall whites. It was Adamics, Nordics, the Pleiadians who came to seed the living library genetic samples. Okay. Yeah, Andromeda is definitely a galaxy. I want to say it's the closest one to the Milky Way, but I don't know for sure. Okay. So, Life 101 is writing. What do you think of Matthew Brown saying humans are a resource to the aliens on the interview with? It could be true. It might be why we don't know anything, right? We're a farm, but I don't know. Then again, he could just be spreading disinformation. He could be like an intelligence asset that they just inserted to spread misinformation. So it is Sean. Okay. That's my name that you can see, right? Sorry, that was a dumb comment, and I realized it was dumb like when it was halfway out of my mouth. Thank you, Sirius. Sirius writes, love to you and your family, Sean. Thanks for the show. Thank you for showing up, Sirius, and watching. I really appreciate you chose to spend some time. Love to you and your family as well. No, I keep thinking about it. So Solite US Expat is writing, have you tried contacting Catherine Austin Fitz yet? No, I keep thinking about it, and I just haven't. I've been trying to get out. Again, in the last week, I was trying to get out 8 episodes, and I got out 7 of them, but I still have to fill out all the information on Spotify for 2 of them. Like literally, I had everything or all but one edited, so 7 of them, and it took me the entire day just to do thumbnails and all the other nonsense, you know. So, anyway, by the way, maybe you could do a show on the missing people around Mount Shasta. Apparently, there's a reptilian base there taking people. I've been to Mount Shasta. I actually, one of my older, the videos that I have where I'm asking people to like and subscribe and all that stuff was recorded on Mount Shasta. So, Sean, okay, Kason Lee is writing, Sean, do you know a guy named Benton Ryer? Just go to my content and look at upcoming episodes. You'll see 2 episodes with Benton Ryer scheduled for end of June, early July. All right, Solar US Expat is writing John Vivanco and his team of remote viewers got data that reptilian types have been taking people to their base in the mountain for DNA extraction genetic experiments. Okay, Providence. Hey, Sirius, thank you very much for becoming a YouTube member. I very much appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Very nice. I mean, we don't have much time left, but hopefully we still get to 100. We'll see. If you haven't hit like yet, please hit like. I just want to see if we can actually get to 100 for no other reason. All right, Gray Owl, Sean, Case and Lee. The owl is good. Nothing a week in the tropics wouldn't fix. Okay, Case and Lee said, Sean, he mentioned you. That's why I asked. Yeah, good. He's a good dude. He's definitely a good dude. Okay, Soulite US Expat is writing. Well, apparently there are some people that feel like 2 pinpricks in the back of their necks, and then they end up missing on Mount Shasta. RV data on reptilians has come up as not being nice. All right, I'm all caught up. Let's see, the pinpricks are the DNA extractions to see if you were going to be taken or not. Yikes. Yeah, Sirius, you have chosen wisely indeed. I echo that. How are we doing on likes? Because I'm not tracking them. I'm not tracking it when I'm where I am right now. But let's see. Let's see if I can actually see any data here. Okay, on live. Yeah, the system's showing me 59. So maybe someone came in and no, with 0 dislikes. So maybe it's lagging what you all are seeing. Oops. Yeah, I think there's a lag. I think there's a lag on YouTube system. So thank you, Scott Ian. Your 64 is probably closer to what it should be. Thank you all for continuing to hit the like button. We have 11 minutes. 11 minutes. I don't know if there's enough people on this to drive it up to 100, but it's still good. Let me see how I did last week on that, just for like a measure of comparison. Now, granted, that one had an entire week to acquire likes, and I don't mean the one on Wednesday. I mean like the one that I did on the Nordics. So engagement. Oh wow! You already beat last week. I had 52 likes and 2 dislikes. So gotta love people like that who just come in and take a crap and then move on. But it does happen. It does happen. Although we've already crossed 500 views before the end of this episode, which is good. I mean, at least a good. I mean, it's great for a live stream. All right, and then I missed a bunch of comments. Here we go. Is that before it news? Yeah, like it's driving a huge amount of traffic, right? I mean, I don't want to say huge, but like it helps. It definitely helps a lot. Oh, nice. Yeah, this is the perfect kind of episode to post on before it news. 100%. Hey, Jay, good to see you. 68 likes. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you, Kason. I appreciate you. Nice. All right. Let's just try to get it to 100. Slow but steady. If you hadn't hit like, please hit like. I mean, obviously you don't have to, but we're just trying to see if we can, given that I've already gotten through all my material. And if you're just joining now, just start from the beginning, but hit like before you start from the beginning, because I've already gotten through the material on the tall lights. And we're just kind of going through comments right now. Yeah, what is that? What is that from? Is that from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? Right? 69, dude. So like US Expat said, I just want to say 69, dude. Just not yet. Oh, not yet. I got it. There you go. Jay beat you to it. All right. Now we just gotta get. Yep, Bill and Ted's yeah, the fact that I knew that is weird. Okay, so Jesse Roberts is writing, Sean, I was watching this Netflix show, Love, Death, and Robots, and one of the episodes was straight out of Weird World War China. I don't know if the story got sold to the show, if they were what I have no knowledge of it. Which story was it? What was the episode called? It's possible that the author, because they would deal direct with the author, they wouldn't deal with the editor. So yeah, let me know what episode that is. I doubt it, because I'm sure the author would have told me. But yeah, why not? Sure. So yeah, it'll register as a distinct leg. Oh man. Yeah, seriously. Which like find that episode, because I want to see if it's. I doubt it's from Weird World War China, but you never know. Mm, yeah, I didn't have any stories like that in Weird World War China, so it's probably. I mean, it's probably fits the motif, but it's not. All right, how we doing on likes? By the way, that does happen sometimes, though. There was like a Spanish film company that approached one of the authors in Weird World War III to make a film about her story, but I don't know how that's progressed. I don't, those things sometimes they just ebb and flow. Yeah, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure was an epic film. I use their quotes all the time in my analysis videos. How's it going? Royal Ugly Dudes. Yep. LMFAO. Gray Owl. So we're at 69 still. Man. Break 70. David Shauna's writing the claims of whites mimicking how we talk and use of made up or makeup reminds me of details of Men in Black encounters. That's true. The Unknown Archive. Okay, done. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let me see what YouTube's telling me. Oh, nice. 71 and rising. Outstanding. We got 4 minutes. 4 minutes to get to 100. I still think it's doing pretty well. I mean, this is better than average, I think. Let's see. Audience. Oops. Yeah, this thing's like deep. It's like it's lagging with the actual. My data says 65, but I think it's like it's on a lagging basis. Maybe if I just go directly to the 72. Case and Charlie Manson. 73. 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. Just get to 100. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. There would have to be an avalanche of viewers. Yeah, just as a reminder, if folks are just joining, we're trying to get to 100 likes, and we're at 73 right now. So, if just for the experiment, like this episode. One more minute. One more minute. Can we get to 100 likes? Going once, going twice. Still have one more minute. Put the comments. Okay. All right, one more minute, folks. 74. Can we just get to 75? One. Oh no. It went back to 73? Still at 74. We get to 75. 75. Going once. There we go. 75. That's good enough. Good enough for government work. Anyway, I think it's about time for me to conclude this evening's festivities. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Good night and God bless you all. Good night, y'all.